Welcome to Fun Facts Daily, your source for just the good stuff. Monday through Friday, we're bringing fun facts and news you can use, all carefully curated to uplift and inform. So give yourself a break, relax, and learn something awesome in just a few minutes every day. Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Wood, and today we're going to be learning about one of the Earth's most vital but often overlooked natural resources, sand. But before we get into the facts, let's warm up our brains with a little challenge to see if you can tell fact from fiction. Consider this. One day, residents on the island of Jamaica woke up to discover that an entire 400-meter-long public beach had vanished. And I'm not talking about erosion. I mean, thieves allegedly stole hundreds of truckloads of sand, leaving behind nothing but bare rock. What do you think? Is this an actual fact or just too wild to be true? We'll find out at the end of the episode. Now for your word of the day. Today's word is arenaceous. That's ARENACEOUS. Arenaceous is an adjective that simply means relating to, growing in, or consisting of sand. If a rock like sandstone is described as arenaceous, it means it's made of cemented sand. If a plant is arenaceous, it means it's a species that thrives in sandy soil. It's a wonderfully specific word that sounds much more complicated than it is. The word arenaceous comes directly from the Latin word harina, which literally means sand or sandy place. This Latin root also gives us a much more common English word, arena. In ancient Rome, the central flooring of the amphitheater, like the Colosseum, was called the arena. This was because the fighting area was covered in a deep layer of sand, which was great for absorbing blood or other fluids from the gladiator games, making it much easier to clean. So, when you're at a basketball arena or a concert arena, you can mildly impress or bore your friends by sharing that the name of the arena comes from the sand that once covered the floor of the Colosseum. Time for your daily high five, our top 5 fun facts about sand. Number 1. Sand actually comes in pretty much every color you can imagine, and the white sand on tropical beaches is actually often fish poop. When you think of sand, you usually picture the light tan or yellow-brown color. That color typically comes from grains of mineral quartz, but sand is simply a name for rock and mineral particles of a certain size, between 0.0625 and 2 millimeters. The color of the sand is determined entirely by what it's made from, which varies wildly depending on the local geology. For example, the famous pink sands of Bermuda get their colorful rosy hue from the crusted reddish-pink shells of tiny marine organisms called foraminifera. And you can find even more amazing colors. At Papakolea Beach in Hawaii, the sand is distinctly green thanks to the heavy green mineral called olivine that has eroded from the surrounding volcanic cone. In many places like Iceland and other volcanic islands, you'll find stunning black sand beaches. That sand is made of basalt, a black volcanic rock that was shattered into tiny grains as it was rapidly cooled by ocean water. Sand is really just telling you the geological story of that specific coastline. But what about that picture-perfect powdery white sand that you see in places like the Caribbean? That sand actually has a wild origin story. It's actually the processed and excreted skeleton of coral, thanks to the hard-working parrotfish. Parrotfish live in and around coral reefs and use their powerful fused-together teeth, which form a beak to bite off and grind up chunks of coral. They do this to get the nutritious algae that live inside the coral skeleton. And their strong digestive system breaks down the algae, but the hard, inorganic coral skeleton is ground up in their guts into tiny particles. It then passes through their system and is excreted as fine white sand. A single large parrotfish can produce hundreds of pounds. Some estimates say up to 800 pounds of this beautiful white sand every single year. So, when you see those idyllic pictures of white sand beaches, you can remember it's all about perspective, and one creature's poop is another one's paradise. Number 2. In Japan, you can find tiny grains of sand shaped like perfect stars. On several islands in Okinawa, Japan, particularly Takatomi Island, the sand looks like it's made of miniature stars. If you look closely, you can actually pick them out of the regular sand. These aren't tiny minerals or eroded rocks, they're actually exoskeletons or shells of microscopic single celled marine organisms called Baculogypsina spherulata. These are another type of foraminifera, the same family as the ones that make Bermuda's sand pink, but these have a unique spiny star like shape. These star shaped shells are only a millimeter or two across. When the tiny organisms die, their intricate little skeletons wash ashore by the billions, mixing with the rest of the sand. Local legends on the island often describe them as tiny children of the Southern Cross and the North Star who were killed by a giant sea serpent and whose skeletons were then washed ashore. Visitors often collect the tiny stars as a good luck charm. And number 3. Under the right conditions, sand can actually become quite loud, described as singing or booming. In at least 35 deserts and beaches around the world, if you walk, slide, or cause an avalanche down the face of a dune, the sand can produce a distinct, low-pitched humming, whistling, or even roaring sound. This sound can last several minutes, and it can be surprisingly loud, sometimes reaching over 100 decibels. That's as loud as a motorcycle or a snowmobile. Scientists believe this only happens with sand that meets very specific criteria. The sand grains must be very similar in size, about 0.1 to 0.5 millimeters. The grains also have to be roughly spherical and contain silica. Most importantly, the sand has to be extremely dry. When a layer of this uniform sand slides over another layer, the grains vibrate in unison, creating a shared frequency. The entire dune essentially acts like a giant natural loudspeaker, amplifying the sound of all those billions of grains moving together. Number 4. Believe it or not, the world is facing a global sand shortage. It seems hard to believe given the massive deserts and seemingly endless beaches on Earth, but the world is genuinely running out of useful sand. The sand we need for modern society to make concrete, asphalt, glass, even computer chips is actually a specific type. It has to be angular sand, found in rivers, lakes, and coastlines, because its rough edges lock together perfectly to create strong concrete. Desert sand, which has been eroded by wind instead of water, is too smooth and rounded. It just slips apart, and that's not helpful in construction. Sand is actually the second most used natural resource on Earth, right after water. We use about 50 billion tons of aggregate, which is mostly sand and gravel, every single year. That's enough to circle the equator with a wall 88 feet tall and 88 feet wide. And our fifth and final fun fact for today, the clear glass in your window was made from melted sand. One of the most magical things about sand is that it can become glass. When ordinary sand, made mostly of silicon dioxide or silica, When that gets heated up to extremely high temperatures, like 3090 degrees Fahrenheit or 1700 degrees Celsius, it doesn't burn up or evaporate. It melts into a thick, glowing, molten liquid. The amazing part is that when it cools, it doesn't turn back into sand. Its entire molecular structure changes, becoming a non-crystalline transparent solid, or glass. This discovery was likely made by ancient people thousands of years ago. The Roman historian Pliny the Elder told a legend of the Phoenician sailors who rested their cooking pots on blocks of natron, a type of soda ash, on a sandy beach. The heat from their fire allegedly melted the natron and the sand together, creating a stream of liquid glass. While that specific story is probably just a legend, we do have archaeological evidence that humans in Egypt and Mesopotamia were intentionally making glass beads and small objects from sand at least 4,500 years ago. Now for some news you can use. Here's a little trick for the next time you go to the beach. We all love playing in the sand, but obviously no one wants to bring it back into their car or their house. It gets everywhere and it seems impossible to get rid of. Here's a little trick for getting that sticky sand off your skin. Use baby powder, or cornstarch can work just as well. Before you get into the car or walk inside, just sprinkle the powder generously over any sandy feet, legs, or arms. The powder is super absorbent and instantly soaks up all the moisture and skin oils that make the sand stick to you. Once the area is dry, the sand brushes right off. Now for the moment you've been waiting for. At the beginning of the episode, I asked if it's true that thieves stole an entire beach in Jamaica. It sounds like something from a cartoon, but that's a real-world fact. In July 2008, a 400-meter stretch of white sand at Coral Spring Beach in Trawanee, Jamaica, completely disappeared. Police reported an estimated 500 truckloads of sand, hundreds of tons, were illegally removed, leaving behind the rocky, gray shoreline. This wasn't an act of nature, it was a large-scale, organized theft. At the time, there was a construction boom happening on the island, particularly for new hotels and resorts. High-quality beach sand is a key ingredient for construction and for creating perfect man-made tourist beaches. Investigators believed the sand was stolen for this purpose, but despite an extensive investigation involving the police and environmental authorities, they were never able to crack the case. The fact that people would go to such great lengths as to steal the sand from the beach shows you just how valuable this natural resource is. Now, I hope you enjoyed learning a bit about sand with me today, and be sure to tune in every weekday for even more fun facts. Fun Facts Daily is an Airwave Media podcast. It was written, recorded, mixed, and edited by me, Kyle Wood. Thanks for sharing a part of your day with me. Be sure to follow Fun Facts Daily on your favorite podcast app so you can keep the good stuff coming your way every day. And if you like the show, please do me a favor and leave a kind rating, review, or just tell your friends about it.